car that can still start a fiery pub debate half a century later. Just whisper its name and you'll see Aussie car fans sit up a little straighter, some with pride, others ready to argue until the lights go out. To many, it was the greatest muscle car this country ever produced, a four-door family sedan that went from the suburbs to Mount Panorama and became Bathurst royalty. To others, it was nothing but a carefully crafted myth, a machine with sketchy brakes and a reputation that grew far bigger than the metal itself. So, how good was the Ford Falcon GTHO Phase III really? Was it truly a world-beating monster, or just a brilliant piece of marketing wrapped around a tough V8? To get the answer, we have to step back into the early 1970s, when Ford, Holden and Chrysler were locked in an all-out horsepower war. And at the heart of it all was Bathurst, the battleground where legends were born. October 1971, the Mountain, the Great Race. This was the defining moment, the day that sealed the Phase III's place in history. Alan Moffat lined up in his Falcon GTHO, staring down a field stacked with rivals, Holden Monaros, Chrysler Chargers, and a collection of gritty privateers. 7 hours of brutal driving lay ahead, and while most teams had two drivers swapping shifts, Moffat went solo. In stifling heat, behind the wheel of a 1,500-kilo beast making over 350 horsepower, he drove every single lap himself. And by the end, he wasn't just leading, he was more than a lap ahead of his nearest challenger. That Bathurst win became the Phase III's crown jewel, the badge of honor that enthusiasts still brag about today. But here's the part most people never hear. The Falcons dominating that race weren't exactly the same ones you could stroll into a Ford dealer and buy. They were fitted with QC engines, hand-built masterpieces from Ford's racing department. Only about 20 of these special motors existed, and they were far from standard. Higher compression, perfectly balanced internals, blueprinted to the nth degree. That's why 7 of the top 10 finishes at Bathurst that year were Phase IIIs with QC power under the bonnet. So yes, the Falcon GTHO Phase III won Bathurst. But was it really the production car doing the winning, or a set of factory race specials disguised as road cars? That's where the legend blurs into myth. And then there was the crash, the one that burned itself into the minds of millions of Australians. Early in that same 1971 race, driver Bill Brown clipped the fence at McPhillamy Park and his Falcon became a missile. The car launched into the air, cartwheeling in a terrifying shower of sparks and twisted metal. Astonishingly, Brown survived. But the footage, replayed again and again on TV, turned the Falcon into both a hero and a villain. Parents watching at home were horrified. "Bullets on wheels" was the phrase that started getting thrown around. But for teenage boys and young men, the image of that Falcon flying through the air was irresistible. Danger, speed, rebellion, and raw power, all wrapped in the body of a 4-door family car you could park in your driveway. It was terrifying, and it was perfect marketing. Then came the claim that pushed the Phase III into legend, the title of the world's fastest 4-door sedan. Wheels magazine tested it at 141.5 miles per hour. That's 228 kilometers per hour in 1971. Outrageous numbers for a carbureted, leaf-sprung Aussie sedan. But of course, there's always a twist. Around the same time, Dodge Polara police interceptors in the US were being clocked at nearly 150 miles per hour. And that famous Phase III Speedo photo, showing the car nudging 145 miles per hour on the Hume Highway, word is the image was actually retouched to make the numbers look a little safer, so Ford and Wheels wouldn't be accused of doing 230 kilometers an hour on a public road. So was it really the fastest? In the US, maybe not. In Australia, absolutely. And in the pub, bragging rights always matter more than facts. And then we get to those two letters, HO. What did they really mean? Most fans will tell you it stood for handling option. That was Ford's official line. But according to Wayne Draper, a former Ford engineer, the real meaning was homologation options. And that fits the truth much better. These cars weren't built to make school runs safer. They were built so Ford could homologate racing parts for Bathurst. But homologation options sounded too technical, and when the press started calling the cars bullets on wheels, Ford softened it to handling option. It was clever PR, but anyone who saw the cars tearing around the mountain knew the truth. Of course, no Phase III story is complete without mentioning the great rivalry. Chrysler Charger E49 versus Ford Falcon GTHO. Want to start an argument at the pub? Just say the Charger was quicker. And here's the kicker, in some tests it was. The Charger's Weber-fed 6-cylinder could do 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 6.3 seconds. The Falcon took around 6.4. Over the quarter mile, the Charger could edge it, but Bathurst isn't a drag race. The Falcon wasn't built to sprint, it was built to go the distance. With its big Cleveland V8, long gearing and endurance-focused setup, the Falcon was a marathon runner. That's why Chrysler never took home the big trophy at the mountain. The Falcon just kept going, lap after lap. And yet, for all its glory, the Phase III wasn't perfect. Road testers in 1971 were already calling out the brakes. Around town they worked fine, but push the Falcon hard and its bulk would overwhelm the system. At Bathurst though, Ford had an ace up their sleeve: brake pad chemistry. Partnering with Hardy Ferodo, they developed pads that could last the entire 500 miles. While rivals pitted for fresh pads, Moffat just kept hammering, lap after lap. It was strategy, as much as speed, that sealed that famous victory. For every legend, there's always a darker chapter, and for the Falcon GTHO Phase III, that chapter came with the infamous supercar scare. In mid-1972, just months after Moffat's Bathurst heroics, newspapers exploded with headlines calling these cars bullets on wheels. Politicians panicked, parents were horrified, and suddenly Ford, Holden and Chrysler found themselves under fire for building family sedans that could outrun police interceptors. Journalists painted a picture of teenagers getting their hands on Bathurst-ready monsters, tearing down suburban streets at 140 miles an hour. Whether it was fact or fiction didn't matter. The damage was done. Ford was forced to kill the Phase IV before it even hit showrooms. Holden pulled the plug on its V8 Tirana project, and Chrysler's V8 Charger plans collapsed. In one stroke, the supercar scare ended Australia's first great horsepower war. The Phase III became the high watermark, the peak of Aussie muscle that would never be topped. And that's part of what makes it so legendary today. But the Phase III story isn't just about racing and politics, it's also about the streets. These cars developed a reputation as the ultimate sleeper, especially when police got their hands on them. In New South Wales and Victoria, highway patrol fleets quietly added Phase IIIs to their arsenals. Painted in plain white with little more than a light bar, these family sedans could suddenly hit 140 miles an hour on the Hume Highway, easily running down street racers who thought their hot Holdens or Chargers could get away. Imagine the shock. You're blasting along in your Monaro, thinking you're untouchable, and suddenly in your rearview mirror is a Falcon with a flashing red light and it's gaining on you. The Phase III wasn't just a racer's weapon, it became the law's secret hammer. And then there's the story of the stolen race car, the tale that added even more mystery to the Phase III's legend. In the early 1970s, one of Ford's Bathurst-prepped Falcons disappeared from a workshop under suspicious circumstances. Some say it was stripped for parts, others whisper it ended up in the hands of underground street racers, blasting down back roads in the dark of night. To this day, rumours swirl about that missing car. Did it survive? Is it sitting in a shed somewhere waiting to be rediscovered? Every time a barn find Phase III surfaces, the whispers start again. That's the kind of mythology most cars never achieve, a legend so strong it spawns ghost stories. Of course, myths aside, the Phase III is now one of the most valuable Australian cars ever built. Back in 1971, you could drive one out of a dealership for around $5,000. Today, try $500,000. At auction, pristine examples have pushed past the $1 million mark, making them not just muscle cars, but blue-chip investments. Collectors fight tooth and nail to get the chance to own one.